Join Town Pump's Pump It Up Rewards Plus program and never pay full price for fuel again.
Save 5 cents on every gallon every day at any Town Pump across Montana.
Plus, earn and redeem points on your favorite in-store items to get free stuff with our clubs.
Stop in and pick up a rewards card. Download the Pump It Up Rewards Plus app today.
Or visit townpump.com/rewards to register and start saving.
Town Pump. Right down the road. Pump it up. Oh, yeah.
All right, well, good to be back with you again. The train continues to move on into Game 10 now. So, looking back at Saturday's game, I think a lot of good can be taken from it. I think there's plenty to learn from. It was one of those games where there was plays here and there throughout the game that maybe could have sent it in a different direction, but ultimately we found ourselves in a 28-28 game in the second half, and there's a level of credit that would go to Eastern that got at that point. And again, there was plays on our side of things that, maybe put it in that position as well. But ultimately how we responded from that point forward, Tommy with the big touchdown, our next offensive play, the defense shutting them out the rest of the way. Offensively, we were able to bounce back from the turnover and put that last score up on the board. I think it showed a resolve again, a belief in one another. I don't think anybody, on our sideline panicked, and there's a lot that can be gained from just that being put to the test. Again, we really hadn't been put to the test that late in the game for a while. So pleased with how we came out of it. And again, I think plenty of things that we could grow from. I think defensively, fairly obvious that was the most yards we gave up in the run game. A big chunk came on one play, and that was a play that we should have had people there. And I think that was the common theme. We didn't fit the run quite as well, I think, as we had. The +1 quarterback element of it is part of that. I think the weight of the reps throughout the course of really the week and a half would have gone to an offense that would have leaned more towards Visparis. But ultimately, we practiced, the thought of Jared Taylor playing quarterback. So it wasn't like we didn't, practice towards a running quarterback. So, I think ultimately we didn't fit it as well. Our effort in our mindset was where it needed to be, though. So it wasn't like you look and say, boy, if we'd only played harder. That wasn't the case. I think we played real hard. We continued to hang in there and believe. We worked through some things. I think we adjusted as the game went along relative to their offense. And then I think flipping around our offense against their defense, we knew that the variety of fronts that they presented would give us some issues here and there. But ultimately, we put up some really good numbers. We were really effective for the better part of the first half. I know we had to punt, and then we didn't get a fourth down in the second half, which hurt us. Then we turned the ball over in scoring territory for them. So I think things to work on both sides. I think special teams, we made the big play on kickoff, getting that turnover, and ultimately didn't give up a big play. We were fortunate that they had a penalty on the fake punt. But ultimately, all three phases, we felt we had an edge, but maybe not as big an edge as we've had in weeks prior. So happy to come out of it with a win, happy to come out of it healthy. Really didn't sustain anything, at least sitting here on Monday, that will carry into this next week. And now we're back at home. It'll have been a month about between home games, so excited to be back in Bobcat Stadium in front of our fans, and facing a team that I know to this point hasn't played the level of football that they were predicted to or they would have hoped, but also a team that is very dangerous at the same time. They've dealt with quite a bit, it appears, injury wise, but offensively they continue to put up numbers. Conklin at quarterback is a guy that I think continues to grow as the season has gone along. He's over 2,000 yards, 21 touchdowns at this point. You can just see his confidence growing throughout the year. They got a couple good running backs. I know their leading rusher, Tau Tolliver, didn't play last week, but I think they can certainly run it. And then, you look at the receiving core, their top 3 receivers are 40 catches, 38 catches, 36 catches. So their ability to spread the ball around is certainly different than the last team we played, or most teams for that matter. So offensively, they're maybe not running it as well as they have. They certainly don't have the quarterback run element that they've had the last several years, whether it was Bennett last year or the 2-quarterback system they played before that. But they can still run it, and they're throwing it pretty effectively. Defensively, the one thing I know that jumps out at me right away is they don't have a single starter listed this week that they had against us last year. And that's significant. When you, whatever we played them, game 8 or game 7, whatever it was last year, in a year's time to not have a single guy starting that started in that game last year, that's a lot of turnover, and some of it's been injury, some of it's graduation. I think their hallmark, as much as anything, has been their defense the last several years, and obviously they're not, statistically doing the things that they have done, but I still think they're very principled. They got a defensive head coach. Coach Thompson was their defensive coordinator prior to jumping in that role, so I imagine they're continuing to work through improving that defensive side of the ball. They're led by their 2 linebackers. Those 2 are their best players. They're leading tacklers, all that. So, I think we got to continue to find ways for us to be able to run it, certainly, but then continue to find ways for us to be as balanced and find our playmakers as well. So with that, I'll open it up. Excited again about the opportunity to be back home and keep this thing moving forward.
Defensively, I think they lead the Big Sky sacks, and their numbers don't look that bad. And you have, Will Leota, I guess you guys kind of know from Utah Tech last year.
Yeah.
But I guess what would you diagnose as far as what's been going wrong on that side of the ball?
Well, you just look at the most recent games. I think last week Saturday against Portland State, Sacramento was able to get after them in the run game. They were able to hit a bunch of big pass plays. And it wasn't just Sacramento, the running backs ran for some yards. The week before, I think Idaho State's proving to be, a really prolific offense. And I think they had fair success throwing the ball. So I would imagine it's, the inexperience piece does show up. And they've had some real playmakers the last several years. In particular, when you turn over a defensive line, I think that's pretty challenging, and they got a couple guys that played roles last year, but it was a pretty significant turnover. So, I don't know that it's any one thing. I know right now, where they're at, they've been taking the ball away quite a bit over the course of the year, but then they've turned it over quite a bit too. So they're on the minus side of the turnover margin, even though they have taken away quite a bit. So again, we got to expect them to keep moving forward. And again, I'm sure Coach Thompson is doing everything he can to, look at, okay, we have a running offense, a running quarterback. Okay, what do they need to fix from Saturday night? And they were big plays again. Portland State had a lot of big plays against them. Try to limit the big plays and make us really earn it. And we got to be prepared for that type of game.
Then looking back at Saturday at Eastern, seemed like the D line kind of really stepped up in that fourth quarter when you guys got those big stops. Is that something you kind of looked at as far as like maybe the line was having some success earlier, and then you guys
that's what do you look when a team runs on you? It can be a lot of things. It could be we were just getting pushed around, we were getting driven off, and that wasn't the case. It was easy to watch. Well, it wasn't easy to watch. It was hard to watch at times, but it was easy to see. It was us at times just being out of position. And sometimes that the blame does fall on you as a defender, but sometimes the credit goes to the offense too. I know they got us out leveraged really on both of Wortham's long runs. There's 96 yards on 2 carries right there. We just we were technically where we should be, but we got blocked on both of them. I think there was a couple other times where when the running back got loose, we just didn't quite fit something right. We play behind a block, and I'm talking about a handful of plays, but I really think it was Wortham's 2 rushes, and then the running back running like 12 carries for 70 yards. That's really what hurt us, so that's 160 some yards right there. And it wasn't, I guess Taylor's runs kept the chains moving at times, but I think his long was 7. That was 25 carries. So, and I know there's a couple lost yardage plays there, including the last one, but ultimately, I thought we played well up front by and large. We were physical up front, and we disrupted him as a passer. Again, we let him get out of pocket a few times, which, coming down the stretch, we're going to have to find a way to keep guys in pocket. We've been off and on, hot and cold on how that's gone. So pleased with the D line by and large. It wasn't one of those games where you just feel like we just couldn't hold up. We held up just fine. I mean, Alec Eckert and Paul Broad made as many tackles in that game against a run as they have in any other game. So certainly a good game to build on those guys.
You mentioned the QB run kind of being affected in Sac's offense this season. I guess how have you kind of seen them compensate for not having Bennett, I guess, from up this year?
Well, it changes. Now you just look at their numbers. What they were able to get out of Bennett, both called quarterback runs, unscripted scrambles, was significant. He was a really good athlete. And then you look before that, we didn't play him with O'Hara, but they would put O'Hara in, and that was such a big part of their offense, their running game. So, I think there's a void there. It's obviously a running back oriented run game now. So, how do you make up for that? You throw the ball a little bit more, and beyond those 3 receivers, their backs are involved. I think Tolliver's their 4th leading receiver. They don't have the dominant tight end from a receiving perspective that they've had in Martin from the last couple of years, but then I think their tight end is their 50th leading receiver. So I think you just see the ball spread around more. And, if we're talking, 10 to 15 plays a game, it just goes in a different direction. It's probably going more to the pass side.
And you mentioned, coming out healthy out of Eastern and no changes to the 2 deep. That seems kind of a rarity this time of year.
Yeah.
How are you kind of feeling health-wise overall?
I think good. I think the bye week was an opportunity for a bunch of guys to recharge. So I think that set at a good time for us. I think there was some physical moments in that game, but to come out of it healthy, I think we're feeling really good. To get Julius back, and I know Julius didn't play a ton, but just to get him back going, I think it is something that we'll build upon. Get Adam back. Adam played really well. Bryce did some things out there. Bryce and Neil, it was really intention that they would split reps, but just they were splitting drives, and Neil, I think, got more plays than Bryce did. So yeah, I think health wise, depth wise, just in general, a big charge has been to continue through this time to build our depth. We have lost some significant guys on defense, but we've had guys be able to step in their roles, and just as important is, okay, who's stepping into those backup roles. And I think we've identified those guys, and we've done a good job at least preparing more and more guys each week. So yeah, as we head down to the home stretch into November here, I think we're pretty fortunate with where our health is at.
So the consistency before, but you guys are on the cusp of pinball, which has never been done before in program history. Is there anything just so special about this season that that's when you guys can make history on Saturday? Well,
I hope it's that we don't think about things like that. I think our ability to live in the present moment has allowed us to just keep stacking these up, and I really think it's that simple, but that's really complicated. I think as you get into November, I think the stakes do rise. We have goals in this program that are beyond the 1-0, but living in that world and really going back to work each week. And it's not that we invented that this year. I think we've talked in terms of 1-0 much more this year, but it's been how we've tried to treat each and every week, each and every opponent prior to this year in my 3 years too. So I think it's played out the way it has. We're fortunate to be in the position we are, last undefeated team in the FCS. So we gotta do everything we can to keep that going. So I think our guys they've embodied it. I think they felt like coming out of last year, maybe we did get a little ahead of ourselves at times. Maybe we made some assumptions about what was out in front of us, and becoming more grounded, becoming more in the moment. We were more intentional about that going all the way back to January.
Brent, I've got a non-Sac State question for you, if that's all right.
Yep.
Are you able to think back to the beginning of your time here and your first impressions on kind of what you had in Ryan Lonergan, and then maybe a second part of what his progression has looked like for you that was on the field a lot for you now as a senior? Can you just take me through what his journey has looked like?
Yeah, I remember sitting down with each and every one of the guys that first February back in 21, and at the same time we'd gone through the depth chart with the coaches, a lot of which were returning. I think at that time Ryan was a guy that certainly had a lot of potential. I think was highly thought of after what he did at Bozeman High, both on the football field and the basketball court, but he was still young. And in talking to Ryan, I know he'd had some injuries to that point. He was a guy that was on the front side of developing confidence. I think as much as anything, and would have had a few opportunities to get on the field in some facet in 21, but not too many. I know we leaned on Trayton and Derek and even Ryan Davis quite a bit that year. And then I think in 22, Ryan took on some really serious special teams roles, and you could see, his confidence, grow, and Trayton and Derek were still there at the same time, so. And that really continued until mid-season last year. Was actually when we played Sac State. Was really the first time Ryan got a chance to go out there and kind of fulfill this promise. And I think since then, his role's grown, his confidence and his understanding of what's in front of him, and the opportunity, I think, is all come to fruition, I guess. And that's what you want, because it doesn't happen necessarily overnight for anybody. Some of our guys, do get not buried in the depth chart, but they're just going to be behind some older, experienced guys, and that you can't allow that to define who you are and how you go about your business and getting better. And Ryan's dealt with not only that, but then health challenges kind of along the way, and he's really persevered. And for any team to be what we want our team to be, you need seniors that have their very best years, and you need them to be numerous. And we have the big senior class, but it's guys like Ryan that haven't necessarily played a ton until their senior year that really add to that equation, I guess. And I've been really pleased with the year he's had thus far and his leadership within that group. And he's in the midst of certainly having his best year.
When he doesn't see field, maybe especially offensively for a good part of the time, it's a position where he's had to kind of way to start.
Yeah.
How much are you seeing him kind of embrace being a little bit more involved this year? And I don't know how many 6-year guys you have on the team, but for a guy to be in his 6th year and be playing a little bit more, how much do you hope other guys can kind of maybe learn from him, and like he had a way to start not having to do so?
Yeah, no, I think absolutely. We had a few examples of that. And Ryan's maybe the most significant example of a guy that's weighted in a good to great program should have those stories. It should be the guy that knows it's not about him, it's about the program. If he keeps after it, he'll get his turn, and I think he's a great example of that. And I hope even within that group, we got some talented young players that aren't playing a ton. Hunter Provience comes to mind in particular as a 2nd-year freshman. Hunter's playing, and he's playing here and there, but I hope he looks at a guy like Ryan and sees him as a really good example. So we need guys in this day and age to value being part of this program over anything else. See that their opportunity ultimately will come. And I think so much is made about playing and stats, just in our society in general with sports, more so now than ever. And at the same time, we're trying to have a program that's about team first, and it's guys like Ryan that certainly define that. And he's not the only one, but yeah, to your point, I think you're a great example for young guys that bide your time, keep working, and it'll work out for you.
You mentioned Julius earlier. I guess I know kind of limited on Saturday, but what have you seen from his injury recovery process, and I guess where he's at right now?
Well, I think he's in a pretty good spot, and getting out there and being tackled. We didn't do that at all during practice. So that goes back to April for him. So I think, that was a step for him, I guess, as much as anything. And, he had a couple decent opportunities. He had a couple opportunities that weren't great. But, going out there and taking on a true tackler versus a scout team guy that's going to tag off is a little bit a different world. So, you keep, I guess, adding to his plate, hopeful that there's more opportunities to come, as we move forward. And I trust that he's going to make the most of it.
Was there a point kind of in that, I think you called it a ramp up process, that you kind of needed to see out of him to be ready for Saturday, or I guess?
Well, between just Julius, our training staff, and kind of just what you see with your own eyes, I think it was all those things. Going back, I think he was probably in position, I say probably, for that Portland State. So, it's been a deliberate ramp up, but ultimately getting out there and playing in a real game where you could be tackled was the next step. And I think, how limited it was one thing, but there was still, he had 5 carries, he got tackled 5 times. And, I think that we could put that behind us and him and obviously move forward.
Bit off topic. We're doing a little bit of a different story in a couple weeks here, but you guys have a Montana Highway Patrol officer always with you on the roads. What's that kind of like? Do you notice it? What's that kind of, he follows you a lot, obviously, on the field.
Yeah.
So what's that kind of?
Well, it was a program started before I got here. I do think, there's the practical piece, I suppose, to the post game protection, so to speak, I guess. But more so, I think just an ability for us to partner with the Highway Patrol. I think that's probably the biggest thing I see, an opportunity to have a patrolman on our sideline, travel with us on the road, to kind of bridge that gap, obviously, between, our team and law enforcement. I think that's a positive piece, no matter what, whether it's BPD, UPD, whatever it might be. And it just so happens with Highway Patrol, I think we got a really good partnership going with them, and really appreciate their willingness to want to be, a part of our sideline, our travel crew, and I don't know how much protection has been needed in my, I guess, 50 games now, but they're there in case something does go awry.
The Tommy Taco touchdown, I think in that situation, 7, it's easy to run it or to check down or something. So I guess maybe take to Tommy's ability to make that throw, to have the confidence there, especially coming off a big, the drive early. Yeah,
you get sudden change opportunities like that as a play caller first. You want to be overly predictable, but those are opportunities where you might feel like you got the defense on their heels all of a sudden. They just came off the field, and in that case, they're maybe scrambling to figure out, what had happened along the course of that previous drive. They get thrown right back out there. They hadn't had any time to sort that out. You want to be able to take advantage of that sudden change piece a little bit, and obviously the field position allowed for us to take, really what turned out to be a shot to the end zone. So it starts with Tyler and the play call, and then Tommy's ability to execute that, I think, and hanging in there. That he got hit on that play, I know. Taco being able to navigate it. Obviously, ultimately they're playing man coverage, and the guy gets a little bit caught in the backfield with the play action, and Tommy's able to slip or Taco's able to slip the defender, and Tommy was able to throw a strike to him. So, opportunistic play. We were up 14-0 just like that. And, it was obviously it was good to grab the momentum early. Obviously, we gave it up as the next couple quarters went along, but big to get up 14-0.
Speaking to Tommy getting hit, it seemed like early on they brought some blitzes or had a couple of free rushers, and he had quite a few. What was it?
Well, we had 3, and in each case, there's probably something we can. That's what I'm talking about, detail. He got hit on a pressure that we should have had. We had enough guys there. We messed it up. That was a drop back, and a couple other play actions where, we just didn't quite finish blocks, or on that touchdown, probably gave them too good an angle. So I think those, I probably talked in terms of defensive details from time to time, but there was certainly some offensive details that went into, I think, those 3 quarterback hits in particular.
Is a will you marry me in your future? Or maybe you do it all over again. Hi, I'm Brian Toon with Jewelry Design Center, inviting you to come see the largest selection of Will You Marry Me in the state of Montana. The brightest diamonds of every shape and size, unique settings built to last, and skilled jewelers on site offering free sizing and maintenance for life, because that's how long we want to be your jeweler. Jewelry Design Center in Missoula, on Brooks, across from the Montana Club.
There's always a party in Montana, whether you're going to a wedding, a football game, a concert. Montana Party Bus can get you there safe and will take you anywhere in Montana. You can relax with friends in style, luxury, and safety. Western Montana based for local and regional travel within Montana borders. Montana Party Bus is great for both large and small groups with a capacity of up to 30 guests. If you want to elevate your event, call them anytime, 406-200-8096. You can also visit mtpartybus.com. Travel anywhere in Montana in style with the Montana Party Bus.
Coulter, do you have anything?
Yeah, hey, Coach, thanks for taking a minute. First of all, it's been a really, really long time since Montana State beat Sac State. Part of that's like in Bozeman, that is. Part of that's just scheduling anomaly, but I mean, is there a significance there of just kind of wanting to beat a team on your home field that I guess the last time you guys lost a regular season home game before your time was Sac State back in 2019?
Yeah, I don't know. I wouldn't probably even think in those terms at all. I know, we've only played them once in my 4 years, and we got them last year. I think that's. I think you tend to live in the careers of these guys too at the same time. I know we have those 6-year guys that were red shirts back in 19. So those guys probably remember it. I know Coach Daly was on that staff as well. So I don't know. I think we tend to live in the time that we're here more than anything. And we've only played them once. I think that's, you look at a team like Eastern Washington, now we've played 4 times. I think we've played Weber 4 times, and these guys, we've only played them the 1 time. Same goes for Davis. We've only played them once. So I think, with Sac State, I think you recognize how good they've been, through that same stretch. I think that's what you and while the record's fallen off a little bit this year, I think you sense that, they're capable on, any Saturday of breaking out of what's kind of occurred now the last few weeks, and we got to be ready for that.
You mentioned just all the personnel differences you noticed. Do you notice much of a difference though in scheme, particularly defensively, or is it pretty similar to what Coach Thompson's run all these years? Yeah,
they're living within the same, I think, relative world. Little multiple front wise, mixed up coverage, principled by and large. I say that, and we go from a week where we had no idea what we would see with Eastern. They had shown so much over the course of even the last month. And Sac State is quite a bit different in that regard. They've, again, their success has been twofold. It's been offense and defense, but I think a big part of it has been how they've played defensively. So they are not straying from that scheme. Players are different within it. I think, front experience and some of those things is certainly different, but yeah, they've been in a pretty similar world.
Tolliver being out, obviously, I mean, he's a really good player, but I think their other two backs are pretty good too. So how do you just evaluate their running back group?
Yeah, I think it's Borders, right? The next guy up. That part didn't change a whole lot. And, thinking back to last year, they had Fulcher, and Fulcher was really good. And then he went out early in our game, but they still, I think, were able to do things, on the ground. So yeah, they have a good stable. They've been running through some guys. I just think the run game is different without the quarterback element being so prevalent. But they got a good offensive line led by Slater, who's certainly one of the better linemen in all of our division, I would say. And I think they've played good up front offensively, and I think more than anything, I look at the last several years, that's been the foundation for them. So the tweak in the offense comes to a point where, okay, we got a different guy playing quarterback. How do we play to his strengths, but still be able to run the ball? And I think beyond Tolliver, yeah, they've been productive.
Speaking of the quarterback, I mean, I know that they really liked him coming out of high school and obviously played him a little bit last year, get his feet wet, but now he's kind of the guy. So I think he's second in the league in touchdown passes. Just your overall evaluation of how he's developing as a redshirt freshman.
Yeah, I think he's doing a good job. You can see again his confidence growing, and anytime you had a young guy and the ball is being spread the way it is, I think that's a compliment to, I suppose, play calling, but also a compliment to him. It's easy for a young guy to continue to find the same guy over and over again and zone in on one guy and not read through things, whatever. But I think that's a pretty telling stat when the ball spread out as much as it is. And they have some, I think Gibson, I think, is a really talented receiver. He's 40 catches, and the next two guys are 38, 36. So, I think he's got the ability to extend plays, at the same time. And he's played, I think he's continued to play very poised. And given the situations they've been in tight games, couple overtime games, chasing points, the way it unfolded the other night, and then a lot more gets put on a young kid's shoulders. So for him to improve upon his game through a challenging time where, he hasn't been able to just sit out there in the second half and hand the ball off, I guess. I mean, I think that's probably what, you really grow, through adversity, or you crumble. And he's, I think, continued to grow.
So much of the talk around just Sac State in general has been with this conference realignment, and there was the whole story about all their NIL stuff and all that. Do you have any impressions or thoughts about that and how it impacts the Big Sky Conference as a whole?
Well, I think media market wise, I think where they're at, I don't know the ins and outs whatsoever, but their potential to whatever, if it's raise capital or make some bold moves is a little bit different than some of the other locations within the conference. Being in California, being a state school along with three other state schools that are FBS, I suppose that maybe plays a part of it. But I think they've been outward as far as any of those conversations go. I really, the big NIL number, I don't know what to make of that or what that even meant, honestly. But they got a little different situation, in Sacramento, California than we do here in Bozeman, Montana, as far as just pure population, businesses, et cetera. So, I whether there's anything to it, they're outward thinking, whether that's outside forces, maybe forcing their hand, I don't really know. But, each team, I think, in this changing landscape, each school in this changing landscape has got to be forward thinking. Whether you're outward thinking or not, I don't know, but it certainly has to be forward thinking, and that's apparent that they've been, and we'll see where it goes.
Last thing for you, just doing a little something on the rising sort of Walter Payton Award candidates, and I think I know the answer to this, but I'm assuming you think your quarterback should be a guy that's at least in consideration for that award.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the season, and I say the season that Tommy has put together, because I do think this award should be a season award. Certainly what you've done over your course of your career, and Tommy would have all of that, is important. But you're looking at the player of the year or whatever for the season. And Tommy has certainly done everything we've asked. I think, his growth in the passing game for us, his efficiency has been, beyond noticeable and beyond impactful. I think his running ability, while maybe not, he hasn't accumulated the same amount of carries and yards. I think the big play ability has been significant. And then what that means, what his threat means to the rest of our running game is significant. There's no way to quantify that, but the threat of Tommy running and what that does for our rushing stats and our running backs, is significant. And then his leadership, and his who he is, relative to our success. I do think, whether it's FCS football or NFL football or anything, I think wins and losses, goes along with a quarterback. It's the only position it does. And there's something to be said for, he's the quarterback right now with the best record in the country. So he would have my vote.
Thank you.
I'll vote.
Anything else in the room? All right, thank you, Coach.
Thanks, Brent.
Yep.
Good, great.
2 o'clock.
Cool.
Thank you.